Well, I think, yeah, I don't uh, know if I can necessarily um speak for the 20% of coffee farmers in Kona who chose to use the organic version of the inputs that we were subsidizing. But I think that, and I'm not, honestly, frankly, I do not think that all of those people wanted to become certified organic. I think that they all, through their choice of action of choosing to use the organic input for coffee berry borer beetle, um, were stating that this is important to us and we need to look out for the impacts of the inputs we're using, because most people don't recognize uh, how and why organics make sense, which is the fact that most things like inputs, like I just mentioned, have a lot of inert ingredients in them. And when you have conventional inputs, you don't know. The manufacturer does not tell you, and you cannot, uh, uh, unless you have extraordinarily complicated laboratory capacity, take apart the input into what it is made out of. And so you're inputting things into your usually 98, 99% of the material is inert ingredients, and you don't know what they are. And I think that not knowing, to protect the manufacturer is interesting, but I think that it's very difficult for people who want to both protect the environment, protect the product that they are seeking to produce. I think that when we were trying to deal with coffee berry borer beetle, it was unclear what needed to happen, and there was a lot of uh, logical process of we need to not contaminate things so that it's transferred uh, between locations, especially if, and it wasn't true in our case because we just manage our own farm and have our own equipment. But if coffee pickers, for example, are moving between farms, then they can move uh, that between farms on their equipment, on their clothing, and things like that. And so there was a lot of uh, outreach about that idea about keeping things clean, making sure that clothes are changed, making sure that containers are washed, making sure that you're not using dirty bags for holding products in order to limit the movement of the pest between between farms, which I think is important. I think that coffee berry borer beetle is one thing, and I think over the years people have mostly figured out how to work with it and survive with it. But it brings up the next opportunity of conversation, which is that then, you know, 10, 12 years later, now we have coffee leaf rust, which is completely different and exists, everywhere, and transfers itself much more rapidly and easily through the environment than something like coffee berry borer beetle, which has to move itself. Because coffee leaf rust can be moving around in the wind um, quite extensively. And so that's something that you can't limit or control or protect yourself anywhere near as much in terms of farm management. Uh, and so you have to do something like focus on a different aspect of the production of the crop. You have to focus on the tree health and whether or not the trees are able to uh, live with coffee leaf rust. And I think that the the ironic, and it is ironic because coffee leaf rust has been around for many decades around the world with coffee production. The ironic truth is Hawaii was subjected to its introduction almost simultaneously with COVID coming to human beings. And they transfer almost exactly the same. And they affect almost exactly the same. And there really isn't a lifelong way to fight those things off, because even if you can get immunized for a few months or 6 months, there's always new strains. And that's true in both of these cases, that you can have a tree that's resistant to coffee leaf rust, but that tree will not change when coffee leaf rust is modifying itself over the next few years. And so then the strain will develop that the tree is no longer resistant to. And so that answer by itself is only a very minor approach, when the true answer, just like I said with COVID, with humans, is you got to look out for your own immune system and your own health. Because if you don't start with that strength of process, then you're going to be, I'm not going to say wasting your time, but you're using it extraordinarily inefficiently, especially with something like human beings, which you're not going to replace, or a crop like a perennial tree, which especially small scale farmers aren't replacing their coffee trees. That's not an option. And I think that's a huge issue when it's recommended that, oh, well, you can change to this variety. The percentage of coffee farmers who in Kona who can take out their existing coffee trees and replace them with a different variety and then wait 2-3 years for production and then have to do that same thing in 10 years is very small, because that's only going to be it's not going to be small scale farmers who are taking care of their own economics. It's going to be a company that's buying a piece of land and planting coffee when there's nothing there, and they have the money to do those processes of replacement and pay people, especially, frankly. And it's hard to compare Hawaii to the rest of the country because Hawaii is the only place that coffee is produced commercially. But when you look at the whole world where coffee is produced, the cost of labor is so much higher in Hawaii compared to anywhere else that coffee is grown in the whole world, that the labor you're paying to take out those trees, and then you have no production for 2 or 3 years, and then you have to not just take out the trees, but plant new trees, is out of control for a coffee farmer. A small scale operator can't participate. And so with coffee leaf rust, I have really focused on, let's focus on the tree health and focus on how it can not fight off coffee leaf rust, but how it can live with it, because it's not going to go away. No matter what, there's no way to get rid of it. And I think that it's not a better example, but I think it's a more appropriate example for organic thinking and organic mindset than coffee berry borer beetle, which it's like, okay, well, we can provide this input if we can figure out how to manage it. But I think back to your question of that, I think that coffee berry borer beetle, originally people thought, oh, well, we can spray this input on a monthly basis or every 3-week basis and keep it at bay. And it was pretty quick that farmers realized, no, if we keep things clean and we don't transfer it very much, then we just can focus on a 2 to 5 month period of sprays versus 12 times a year, which a small scale operator can't. Again, like I said about coffee leaf rust, how can you afford or deal with that? You can't add that. And we lost a lot of farmers, frankly, too, because they couldn't add that extra expense to their management. And so I think pests and diseases can be a big problem, but I think the organic systems plan that you have to have if you're certified organic means that you're looking out for the health of the whole system and not just responding to a pest or disease problem in the moment. And I think that that's the big difference in thinking and the big difference of how you can deal with issues which ideally aren't just reacting to a problem, but instead are maintaining a healthy whole ecosystem, which again isn't just your farm. You have to look at the parts around it as well. And especially in a place like Kona, where average farm size is 5 acres, that's really important, because if one of my neighbors even is doing something like spraying Roundup for weeds, I have to be paying attention to that drift and where it's coming and where it's going to. And I think at a personal level, that has been, I remember one year we have 4 neighbors who have coffee, and one year they hired someone to spray Roundup, and nobody has fences. There are no fences here at all. And, they came into part of our farm. So for 3 years, that little section of our farm was not certified organic. I had to sell that as not organic coffee because, they hadn't shown them where the line was, which, was not something easy if you're going to have an outside person do work when there are no fences. So I think that these things get very personal very quickly, but also are very complicated because, I'm not going to be standing out there managing their person who's spraying. No one's going to schedule or work around that. So then you have to react to it, like I said about reacting to pests and disease problems, which I think is not the way to go, but sometimes you're stuck in the reality of how do I deal with this now that I have it. And I think that the truth is that if you have a very healthy functional system, you don't have to worry about it anywhere near as much as if you have a monocrop, you're just coffee, for example, and or you're only dealing with how to manage things as reactions rather than looking at the whole picture, which I think is the critical thing for organics to succeed, frankly.
I think that's a wonderful insight and wonderful understanding of the system in which organic functions. And I think one of the benefits, or multiple benefits, but one of the benefits that I like to highlight regarding organic is that it focuses on the entire system. It's not an individual crop or individual method of tillage. It's or reducing tillage. It's the entire system, the entire ecosystem, which functions to increase the health of the plant and the environment around it. And I think a lot of people, from what I understand, a lot of farmers, a lot of producers would like to produce organically, but may not be inclined to become certified organic because there's this competition between, or I shouldn't say competition, there is an incentive to focus on marketing the product as locally grown rather than organically or certified organic. And from a economic standpoint, you get a increased ROI off of that, and then just managing organically or not. But typically people are managing organically because they don't want to have the exposure to the chemicals that are related to conventional. Um, can you speak to that dichotomy of uh, grown locally or Hawaii grown versus certified organic in terms of the ROI? And that's one aspect of the reason why people become certified organic. Can you speak to that if that's something that you've experienced?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting inquiry because I think that it's very true that a higher percentage of people want to emphasize that locally grown component of what they're choosing to purchase or consume instead of, I think instead of it necessarily being certified organic. And I think that the biggest problem that I have with that conceptualization is the fact that there's no reason it couldn't or shouldn't easily be both. So it can be locally grown, certified organic. It's just, it's not either or. And I think that that's the biggest difficulty when people argue, oh, well, I want to make sure it's local. It's like, fine, that's sure. Make sure it's local and it's going to be certified organic too. Why is it not certified organic? And so I think that it doesn't need to be a division. It really needs to be a connection opportunity. And I personally don't, I'm going to be honest about this, but I don't have a lot of experience with NRCS. So NRCS is National, what is it? Resource Conservation Service, and they're under the USDA too. And they exist around the country, and every state has a state office, and then they have regional offices around every state. And so a couple of years ago, what happened was that the Congress was convinced and passed a piece of legislation called the Organic Transition Initiative, and it allocated $300 million to organics. So that's not small, and that's pretty important reality, and it happened so that there would be more support provided for organic production, organic farmers. You know, how could people be getting certified? How we could do some outreach that's not happening. And 75 million out of that $300 million, so that's a pretty big percentage, that's 25%, is designated to NRCS, provide direct farmer assistance. So $75 million is going for NRCS to have to focus better and more at the national level on organic topics. And I personally think that that's one of the huge things that we need at the state level to make sure that NRCS has what they call their technical service providers, who can have partner agreements so that their staff, their permanent staff, because this program is not, this is a 5-year program, their permanent staff are getting things like the training and information and education they need, so that, you know, within NRCS, and I don't think Hawaii has one, but maybe at the state level it does, they have what they title organic conservation specialists. And so that their staff people can make sure that they're providing a good roadmap for how to work at the state and local levels, so that they're getting the trainings they frankly require. I've dealt with NRCS over enough years now, probably most of the time we've been here in different ways. They have different programs that work for us and that we work towards. But can that staff have those conversations about organic questions? I frankly think that it's one of the needs that the state of Hawaii has to make sure that those things are happening at all the local offices, regional offices around the state. And I think that I don't mean to or want to belittle the efforts of CTAR, but I think that the fact is that should be happening at the CTAR level as well, because where CTAR doesn't have a designated organic cooperative extension agent, though all of their cooperative extension agents should be able to have those conversations about organic topics to all of the producers, even if they can't answer every single question, or even if they have to refer to somebody else. Because I think that, from a governmental perspective, I think that that's an important approach to put in sort of permanent capacity, even if that's not where everybody turns, because then there's a resource available. Because many people like myself, for example, or other farmers especially, are going to turn to a farmers group or a nonprofit organization before they're going to go to entities like CTAR or NRCS. But if CTAR and NRCS have those organic trained and educated and capable people accessible at the local levels because they've been informed, then I think that farmers could put their trust and reliance in that kind of information a lot more easily than is currently the truth. And I think that the result would be that shift that the organic, the OTI sought to achieve, which is to get more farmers certified organic. And I think that that's one of the strategies. I think that the fact that I, as a farmer, have tried diligently to participate, and I don't mean to switch topics on you, but I will, and you can cut me off if you need to participate as a mentor in the transition to organic partnership program, the TOP program, which is part of the OTI. That's how it's funded.
Go ahead and great transition. Go ahead and talk about your mentorship program, what your role is, and then what kind of experiences you've had as a mentor, and then how folks, what kind of transition to that.